your community group, a strategy in terms of a communication plan is a really great step in making sure that you can get all of your information out to a wider audience. A communication plan, while it might sound like a big scary or corporate activity to be doing, it can just simply be as quick and easy as a bit of a workshop with your team to look at what your tools or your activity is and how the best way is to be able to communicate that. That means things such as a web or an online presence, also looking at social media, and then looking to couple that with some cross-feeding or getting other organisations or like-minded individuals to be able to promote your activity or program through wider audiences.
It's important to to work out who your audience is, because you need to know what message you're talking about. And I think one of the key parts of that is, if you're in a campaign, you want to know who the decision maker is, and you want to know who the decision maker listens to. And if you're not talking to the people and getting the people who the decision maker listens to on your side, you're probably not going to win.
If you've got a message where you're targeting an age demographic, then you're going to make it different. If it's people from different cultural groups, there might be best ways to gather momentum with those particular groups. So I think it's really important to identify your audience and then work out what the best way to get them on board is going to be, and that's going to vary massively.
To communicate to the broader community about your project, your program, your community group, it's really important to take the time to get to know who the audience are that you're trying to connect to. Part of that is doing just some really basic planning and also some testing of your audiences. So people that are interested, have a chat to them one-on-one about what they respond well to. You may have a group of people that are completely social media savvy and you need to communicate to them through social media channels, whereas you may also find that depending on the event or the activity that you want to run, it may be best to produce a paper-based flyer and put it up publicly for people to see, or have it included in a newspaper, a local newsletter, or something that another wider audience put out, and then that way you can couple it with a little bit of information on social media that therefore you can reach as many audiences in one hit as you like.
Where the ASBN has come to at the moment is that we want to talk to anyone in the community. It doesn't matter who they are, what their background is, because Adelaide being Adelaide, one person has a conversation about one idea, we know that it can just whip around very quickly in our communities. But by targeting strictly the development industry, I think that's, for us in terms of how we go about things or what are our limits, we've been able to identify what track we want to go down in regards to who are the influencers we want to influence.
I think often it's about building alliances with different groups, so people who are already talking to other parts of the community, getting them involved and finding out where we have common ground so that they can actually be the ones talking to those people, because often it's not just about the message, it's about the messenger. I think that's really important. And the other thing I think I've learned is just actually getting out and talking to people that are different to you, that might think differently. I think that's how you can develop a message. You can sit there and try to do as many clever technical ways to, test a message out there, but nothing's more real than sitting down in a group of people and actually listening to people, whether they work in a power station or they're just the average person up the road, listening to what they think about environment issues and find out what resonates with them.
The next really big important milestone for me was the development of the Love Not Loss campaign that happened internationally with a whole bunch of international NGOs, and I was working for WWF at the time, and that was one of the organisations that contributed to that. And what that campaign was saying was that enough with the doom and gloom, people can't handle it. They can relate to it if it's a short term, so we can respond to something like we are at the moment with a drought. We can say, okay, there's a drought, and people need money to get through this season. We will contribute, we will engage with the issue.
If you bombard people with messages about species dying out, pollution and various environmental problems, they'll feel dismayed and they won't be so inclined to engage with the environment. But if you engage them with the things that really inspire them about nature in the first place, for example, when they were kids, get in touch with the wonder of nature, which is why we put on our talks about birds and fungi and bandicoots and various things, then that gives them a chance to really get enthused about it and think, yes, this is something I want to do something about. So the love not lost message we found is very powerful.
So I would really encourage people to take on the testing mentality. It can be really small. It can start really small. You can say, well, that didn't work the way I answered that question. Maybe I'll go away and have a think about a couple of ways I could answer it. And I'll test that over the next week and see which one works. So it can be that small versus a massive program, but it's a way of thinking. Is there a couple of ways I could do this? Could I test that with the people I want to work with on that? Okay, that worked a bit better than I thought it might, or that worked better than the other options. I'll try that a bit more, or maybe I'll refine that a bit more. And then, yeah, be prepared as part of that journey that some things people will go, I just don't want a bar of it. And that's okay, because you know that now. And you will waste no more resources or energy on it. And also remember that might be different in 10 years' time.
Often when I'm like working out, how to get to the bottom denominator, I'll talk to different people in my family and go like, what's your care factor about this particular thing, and how could I get you to think about what you're doing or change your behaviour?
It's important to emphasise the problem, but it's also important to emphasise what people can do about it and what the hope is in the story, what your plan to win is. Because, we can hammer people with a problem, but if we're not giving a clear pathway for that person to get involved and make a difference, then we're just making people sad.
I think that one of the best strategies for influencing other people is to listen to other people. Often, having a criticism of the environment movement is that it's it can be very dogmatic because it's engaging with an urgent message, and that urgent message has a degree of dogma behind it, which often is about that metaphorical beating people over the head with your message. We must be doing this. If we don't do this, we're all doomed. And yes, that is a message, but it doesn't actually win friends and influence people, and it can actually alienate and demarcate an issue. It puts up barriers, and if we're actively putting up barriers as opposed to actively breaking down barriers, we end up alienating people that we're trying to influence.
It's important to think about our values and the values of the people we're talking to when we're developing environment campaigns, because values inform how we act, and at the base of everything we do, people get involved because they care, because they have a value set, and the more we can appeal to that, the more people that are going to engage with us.
It's saying that we actually have more in common with each other than we have different. And the area where we have that, where we share that common, is in our intrinsic human value set. So we all value freedom of some kind. We all value love. We respect and benevolence and creativity and belonging and family. These are things that no matter what political party you follow or which part of the world you're in, these matter to you. And so if we start from a place of common shared values, we have a much better chance of building a common understanding of where we need to go together, rather than focusing as enemies or focusing on the places where we don't have common cause.
So when I started up the produce swap, I guess it was an idea I'd had for a long time, and then the time just seemed right. But initially, to get the message out to our local community, I relied really heavily on social media. So basically through Facebook and a Facebook event, we were able to promote it really heavily in our local area. And the first event we had 30 odd people come along, and that was basically all through social media.
When you're running an event, it's really important to be able to promote it far and wide, and that's where social media can be your friend. Facebook is one example of a medium where they do have some wonderful event activities that you can upload for free, and then you can cross-promote it through your audience. These tools are really effective online once you've built an audience. You need a big following of members who are subscribed to your account in order for them to receive the details regarding your event. If you are looking at other activities, you can do wonderful, there are some wonderful apps online that allow you to send out newsletters and email event information. And there's various third-party groups that you can tap into as a free resource to be able to promote your event. Even basic tools such as Eventbrite will allow you to create an event that you can then upload to multiple online channels. You can also embed it in an email that you're delivering or into a MailChimp-esque newsletter that you would be sending out.
So our social media, we go across Facebook, which is our largest platform. We need to get better at Instagram. I've heard everywhere that Instagram is the thing for younger folk, as well as the stories, which I haven't figured out at all. So those two will be big going forward. Twitter will always be there, but the way that I look at Twitter is that it allows the ASBN to connect with professionals rather than everyday people. We want to engage with people that are doing incredible stuff around the world in South or even in South Australia. Twitter and LinkedIn is a place for that for us, and how we get credibility from those places. If we want to connect with community, Facebook, but more and more Instagram.
So something I did, I guess, by running a project in my local area, it was an area I was familiar with, but I made sure I tapped into some of those existing networks to promote it. And pretty much all the work was done from, a desk at home and a computer. I wasn't out door knocking or letterboxing, but it was reaching out to the existing groups. So the community garden, some of those really influential people in our community. We've got a local market. So those kind of networks I relied on, and I got them to include mention of the produce swap in their newsletters, for example, or on their own social media pages.
You've got to be relevant, the more you can, say if you're on social media, be tapping into what people are already talking to and applying it to your issue, the more people are going to listen. I think we need to remember not everyone's as highly and deeply engaged in the science or whatever of your specific issue. We need to break it down and make it something that people can understand. If they're scrolling through their news feed and they see your message for 10 seconds, are they going to understand it, or is it going to be too hard to engage with because you're talking to a PhD student instead of a regular person?
Hashtags are something that everybody in a communications tool should consider. If you're running an event or an activity, decide beforehand what the hashtag will be that you'll be utilising, and make sure everybody who's attending is aware of that hashtag so that they can participate in the activity or the program and help cross-feed it through their audiences. It's a wonderful way of obtaining greater reach than you may have through your own social networks, and it's a nice way of being able to introduce new people to your program, your concept, to be able to build your audience and your reach for later stages.
I do think that a lot of community groups, essentially they give a volunteer to think about social media. And if that volunteer is not committed to being able to put posts on, regularly throughout the weeks, even throughout the summers or all this other kind of stuff, engagement with that platform will shut off. If perhaps you have some resources as a group, think about how are you going to actually create firm strategy for social media. Think about what kind of outputs those are going to be and what the frequencies are going to be, because people are going to hold you accountable for those. And yes, there's a lot of leeway, but if you all of a sudden don't post things for 2 months, don't post things for 3 months, you've lost that community that you've actually built up.
If you're using Facebook, generally the best thing to do is to put an article up on your own webpage, create it as its own news piece or a part of your website, and then go into your social channel and cross-post it. So it means when people look, or your audience see you on Facebook or on Instagram, they get a link through to the content, but not all the content is held in the news feed. And that's an excellent way of then being able to track any new people who are visiting your website and then looking at trying to engage them further.
Some of the other
big things that we've had is some groups get their teeth stuck into a really interesting and exciting project, which generates a lot of interest in their community. And sometimes that can be around warm, fuzzy, cute mammals like western pygmy possums or southern brown bandicoots. It generates interest from the media, which then sort of gets the word out even more. So I think that can be really helpful.
Having a strategy in place for ensuring that everybody that is part of your organisation is representing the brand in a really positive way. Small organisations and large sometimes can have a difference in opinion between members, and it's really important to have an agreed strategy on how to mitigate any risks associated with that. Any time that you're at an activity on behalf of your community group, you are representing the values and behaviours of your community group. They may not necessarily be your own personal views of an opinion, and it's important to keep those separate.